Tale of Our Time's got to be one of those. It's got to be timeless, first of all. It's got to be a story that not only kids can enjoy, but adults can enjoy for a different reason. And it's got to be a story that you're excited to tell people that just want to hear a story.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, podcasts, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read, or watch in today's case. Though I guess you could pick either one. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and joining me today is my guest and friend, Zach Paradise. How are you today, Zach?
I'm doing pretty well for, a nice Tuesday morning, afternoon?
Yeah, it's actually been really beautiful for being February.
Oh, yeah, it's summer already.
I know. But anyway, is there anything you would like to say to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Zach. I've been living here in Taiwan about almost 10 years now with my wife Christina and my daughter Scarlett. She'll be 3 in May here.
Yay!
But most of the time I play a lot of music with the Muddy Basin Ramblers, and I teach English a couple hours a week here in Xindian. So yeah, that's about all we do. Hang out at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
like you do,
Taiwan style. So yeah, and so then. Let's talk about the story that you brought today. We actually had to stop ourselves from discussing it earlier so that it would be fresh on the call. But what story have you brought for us today?
I brought my favorite story, which is The Princess Bride. Not only it's my favorite movie, but top 3 favorite books, and it's one of the fastest I've ever read a book in my entire life.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. And usually I would ask people if something is across 2 mediums, which one do you want to talk about? Because they're usually like a little bit different or they have a slightly different focus. But for this one, I think it just has to be like they're kind of both encompassing the other, right? Because the movie is so closely about the book. The book is also about the book that's real, but not real.
It's a book about a book. So it's a movie about a book about a fake book.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
It's very, if somehow you've never seen it, it sounds a little bit confusing, but it should become clearer once we get into the summary of it. But it's just The Princess Bride. Like that's what we're going to be talking about in either medium. I don't think that you can really separate them out.
No, you can't.
Clearly.
And you could read the book in a day, like I did. It was the first book I ever read in one day.
Wow.
It's a funny story. I was probably 16 or 17, and I got Saturday detention.
Really?
So it was only a 90-minute detention. And so I went in and I brought a book. I had never read The Princess Bride before.
Right.
I started reading it, and I'm like, oh man. And the teacher said, "Hey, Zach, your time is up." I'm like, Can I stay?
Yeah.
Can I stay? Because the other option was to go home and do yard work. I stayed in Saturday detention an extra 2 hours to read, and then I went home and I brought the book out to yard work.
Yeah.
and I finished it there in one sitting.
Wow, that's really impressive. It's funny too because I feel like you being a teenager, you said you were like 16, right?
Yeah, around there.
That kind of like puts you in the position of like the little boy in the story where like really you don't fit but that's kind of the appeal of this story, I think, right? But like you don't fit the typical genre that you would expect to read this kind of story. Genre, but like
it's crazy. I mean, because the movie came out in 1987, so I grew up on it. Like I can't imagine how many times I watched this as a kid. Can't imagine.
Yeah.
Christina said she watched it every day. Christina's my wife. But she watched it every day when she was like 4 years old. And Scarlett's down there watching it right now.
Yeah. Well, you got to start them early, right? So
you got it.
I think it would, at this point, we should just probably like get into it so people know what we're talking about.
Sure.
So, Zach, would you mind giving us a summary of The Princess Bride?
I will do my best.
Yeah.
The movie starts, it opens with a sick kid and in bed, and his mother tells him, "Oh, your grandfather's coming over and he's going to read you a book." And this kid is like, "No way." But the grandfather tells him, when I was sick and I was your age, my grandfather read me this book. And so starts to read him the book. And it starts off with this farm boy named Wesley and this girl named Buttercup. And Buttercup is described as the most beautiful girl in the world. And then Buttercup just, chastises him all the time and doesn't realize that she actually loves this man. And so eventually she professes her love, and Wesley decides, well, if we're going to get married, I'm going to have to go make some money first. So against her best wishes, he leaves off and on a ship to make his money. And his ship is boarded by the dread pirate Roberts. And the dread pirate Roberts never takes prisoners. So word got back to Buttercup, and man, she was heartbroken. So she just said, I will never love again. And then the prince of this land called Florin is named Prince Humperdink. And he's a bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
As you could imagine in a fairy tale.
He wholly sucks.
And he wholly sucks pretty much. And he decides that he's going to take Buttercup for his wife. And, well, she doesn't really have a choice. So she moves to the castle and just hates her life. But one day, she is captured by three hoodlums named Vicini, the Sicilian, Fezzik, a giant, and Inigo Montoya, a fencer. They're all sellswords. They're mercenaries. They want to kill Buttercup, but they want to blame it on a country called Gilder. They're going to put her on a ship and take her to Gilder and then fake her death so that Prince Humperdinck will go to war. And then as sellswords, they can make money. So on the way in the boat, Buttercup tries to escape, and she jumps into the water, and there's these things called the shrieking eels, which terrified me as a kid. The shrieking eels. I'm not going to the beach.
Anything that screams is so bad. Like the idea of a screaming eel is horrific.
I hate it. So they're on the boat, and they're headed towards Gilder, and they notice there's a ship following them. And they see black sails, so they decide we're going to go up the cliffs of insanity. So, eventually, which we seem to think is the dread pirate Roberts, starts climbing up after them and eventually gets to the top. And Inigo, the fencer, decides to stay behind. And so we find out that Inigo is trained his whole life as a fencer to avenge the death of his father, who was killed by a six-fingered man. So that comes in...
Important detail.
That's pretty important.
Remember that for later. Yeah.
So eventually, Dread Pirate Roberts beats Inigo, goes up, and he has to fight the giant, and he bests the giant, and then he has to face off against the Sicilian Vicini in one of the most famous scenes in, I swear, movie history, and eventually defeats Vicini. And now he takes Princess Buttercup. Still has not revealed that he is, in fact, Wesley. So when Buttercup finds out that it's Wesley, kisses. They fall in love all over again, and they have to escape through the fire swamp, which is, just think of the worst woods ever. Everything wants to hurt you. So there's the ROUSs, the rodents of unusual size, which scared me to death.
Also bad.
And is currently scaring my daughter downstairs. I'll have to deal with that. She has nightmares about the big bad mouse. As they're leaving the fire swamp, they're captured by Count Rugen and Prince Humperdinck, and they take him to a place called the Pit of Despair, where they're going to torture Wesley and steal Buttercup back. Now Inigo and Fezzik are back awake, and he finds out that Count Rugen, the friend of Prince Humperdinck, is actually the six-fingered man. So he's like, I must storm the castle and get this man. But he needs the help of this dread pirate Roberts that he doesn't know is Wesley yet.
Yeah.
But Prince Humperdinck and Count Rugen killed him. So when they arrive in the Pit of Despair, he's already dead. So what do you do with a dead man? You have to resurrect him. So they take him to Miracle Max, played by Billy Crystal, one of his most memorable roles. They give him a chocolate, and he is resurrected. And Inigo and Fezzik and Wesley are going to go save Princess Humperdinck, or
Oops.
Princess
Well, yeah. Princess
Princess
Buttercup
Buttercup,
from Prince Humperdinck.
and yes, and Inigo is going to kill the six-fingered man and gain his revenge, and they do, and they jump out the window onto 4 white horses and ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, it's a very happy ending. One thing I really like about this story is how much it just like commits to being a fairy tale, and like the kind of fairy tale that you like to hear. It's just like, that's the whole point of it. Like, we're not going to try and make it gritty. We're not going to try and make it like make sense. We're just going to commit to the fact that this is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale about true love, and you're going to love it. That's it. Like, that's just what it's going to be. So,
like, I was just telling my wife downstairs when I watched the beginning with my daughter, I said, there's just no wasted scenes in the film. Everything has a purpose. And there's no downtime. Every scene is memorable.
It's a good story. I realized we forgot to mention the book is actually written by a man named William Goldman. Goldman?
Yeah, William Goldman.
Yeah.
Wrote the book.
And then,
but just like the movie, this is kind of told in the third person as a grandfather reading you a book. And William Goldman said that the S. Morgenstern version, which is the fake author of the original book, said it was just too long and it's a terrible book. And so he decided to abridge it and leave in all of the good parts and take out all of the bad parts so that children and adults will like it.
And like, you know what? In retrospect, I guess that is like what we just said about the movie. So we actually kind of talked about your first encounter with this story already at the beginning of this. Well, I guess, I don't know. Was that your first encounter with the story? When you were in detention?
Well, that was my first one with the book.
Yeah.
So I had grown up on the movie. Like, I can't even remember the first time I saw it, because I was born in 86. The movie came out in 87. So my parents probably had it on VHS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's charming.
From my parents watching it on TV. And, first time I really sat down and watched it, I'm like, wait, I already know this story. How do I know this story?
Let's just speed on to the next one then. What makes this story so meaningful to you personally?
Well, I think it's really just that the fact that I knew it before I really had memory of a movie. Like, there's not many movies like that for me where, I grew up watching it before I was under 4 when I started watching this. Like, just reminds me of, sitting there with my mom and my dad, and, I'm scared of the fire swamp. And, I didn't really care about the scenes in the pit of despair. I'd always walk off and get snacks, and my parents would be like, be quiet. This is an important part.
This is meaningful. He's literally dying.
That's the funny part for, the adults. That's what, when I said earlier, Tales of Our Time have to be exciting for any generation. So you can watch it and everybody likes a different part.
Yeah. Well, I think also, like, probably when you're so young, like, it doesn't have much weight because, like, you don't really understand the, like, finality of death, or, like, the danger of, like, hey, we're going to torture you. It's like, that means nothing to a 2-year-old. Like, what does that mean?
It means nothing.
Yeah, like, I don't know what that means. Like,
so. Well, yeah, like I said, I probably left the room for it, and all of a sudden, Wesley's alive again. Like, oh, okay, whatever.
Like, I think he's sleeping, but
get to the sword fighting.
Right. I would much rather watch the funny man bounce around and the giant man just like throw people.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to get back to like just one thing. I really like the way you said it's a story that I knew before I even knew like the concept of movies. I think that like fits very well in what the story itself wants to be. I really like that statement. It was just so ingrained in you by the point that you finally officially saw it, that you were like, yeah, I got this. Like I know everything.
Yeah. When I finally found it and watched it on my own, and it's just like, man, I already know this movie, and I'm just watching it for the first time. Like, it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. So then what meaning do you think that others can find in this story? Or to put it another way, like, what do you think makes The Princess Bride a tale of our time?
Well, having a story like this, especially if you have kids, it's a good template to make up your own stories. Eventually, Scarlett, who's only 3, isn't asking for bedtime stories yet, but eventually she's going to.
It's coming.
There's only so many times she's going to ask me, tell me the story of the Princess Bride. I can use it as a template. You have to have sword fighting, you have to have this, and it allows you to find out what people like, and you can make a story similar to it, but completely different. Put in their friends' names and add in, maybe your kid's really into policemen. You can add in a fight with the police, or the police take out the bad guy. Like,
it does, like, to that point, like, it's a really good, I guess we've already said it too, but like, it's just such a good template of like what a story and like what a fairy tale is. There's sword fights, there's revenge, there's true love, there's pirates, there's like monsters. Like there's really something there for everybody at any point in your life. That's kind of what keeps it enduring.
Yeah, someone asked William Goldman why he wrote The Princess Bride, and it's such an odd title. And he said, well, I had my 2 children. I was putting them to sleep, and they asked for a bedtime story. And I asked one kid, what do you want a story about? And they said, I want to hear a story about a princess. Yeah. And the other kid said, I want to hear a story about a bride. So he made up a story called The Princess Bride and eventually wrote it down. And, here we are today talking about it.
That's so charming.
40 years later.
Yeah. How wonderful.
I remember, so when I first read the book, I was, like I said, 16, 17. I'm not entirely sure. But, I was a hormonal kid and in love with all of the girls.
Oh,
and
really?
I want to read you this one passage because I remember reading this because I used to think, I'm in love with this person. So this is in the beginning. It's not in the movie. But when Buttercup finally realizes that she is in love with Wesley, she goes up to his door and knocks on the door. And here you go. She just opens and says, I love you, Buttercup said. I know this must come as something as a surprise, since all I've ever done is scorn you and degrade you and taunt you. But I have loved you for several hours now, and every second more. I thought an hour ago that I loved you more than any woman has ever loved a man. But a half hour after that, I knew that I felt before was nothing compared to what I felt then. But 10 minutes after that, I understood that my previous love was a puddle compared to the high seas before a storm. Your eyes are like that, did you know? Well, they are. How many minutes ago was I? 20? Had I brought my feelings up to then? It doesn't matter. Buttercup still could not look at him. I love you so much more now than 20 minutes ago that there cannot be comparison. I love you so much more now that when you open your hovel door, there cannot be comparison. There is no room in my body for anything but you. My arms love you. My ears adore you. My knees shake with blind affection. My mind begs you to ask it something so it can obey. Do you want me to follow you for the rest of your days? I will do that. Do you want me to crawl? I will crawl. I will be quiet for you or sing for you. If you are hungry, let me bring you food. Or if you have thirst and nothing will quench it but Arabian wine, I will go to Arabia, even though it is across the world, and bring a bottle back for your lunch. Anything there is that I can do for you, I will do for you. Anything is there I cannot do, I will learn to do. I know I cannot compete with others when their skills or wisdom. And I saw the way you looked at other women. But remember, please, they are old and have other interests. Well, I am 17, and for me, there is only you. Dearest Wesley, I've never called you that before, have I? Wesley, 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 darling Wesley, adored Wesley, sweet, perfect Wesley, whisper that I have a chance to win your love. And with that, she dared the bravest thing she'd ever done. She looked right into his eyes, and he closed the door in her face without a word.
Oh my God. What a quote.
Yeah, so I remember reading that and being like, boy, I don't love anybody.
Not that much. I wouldn't go to Arabia.
My goodness, if that's what love is, my gosh. I've got a lot to learn.
Oh, man. I wish we could keep going, but unfortunately, we're almost out of time. But I have to ask you, if you could give The Princess Bride a one-phrase subtitle of your very own, what would it be?
I would say it is the only fairy tale you'll ever need. Because it is. You could have all sorts of other fairy tales, but this is the only one you would ever need if you could only have one.
Yeah, it's got everything. Does. I want to go watch this when I go home, I think. That's what I'm going to go do tonight. So, well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining me today, Zach. This has been really fun.
Thanks so much for having. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thinking of me.
And it's been so much fun. And thank you to everyone else out there for joining us today on Radio Taiwan International. This has been Tales of Our Time. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, with my guest, Zach Paradise. And I hope you enjoyed learning more about The Princess Bride, the only fairy tale you'll ever need. A tale of our time. We'll see you next time.